Imagine you're 17. You've spent 2 days tracking an animal, finally killed it, and now you're carrying it home, exhausted, expecting a hero's welcome. Instead, an old man pokes it and says it's skinny. People laugh. Nobody cheers. This isn't cruelty. It's a rule, one of 10 that quietly governed ancient human life for tens of thousands of years, with no police, no courts, and nothing written down. 1. The kill was never really yours. Among the Juhoansi of the Kalahari, meat belonged not to whoever fired the arrow, but to whoever owned the arrow, and arrows were constantly borrowed, gifted, and passed around. So the best hunter could return with a huge kill and still walk away with an ordinary share, because an old woman or a child who happened to own the arrow controlled the meat's distribution. This scrambled the link between skill and reward, on purpose, so no one could build up a stockpile of favors owed to them. And since there was no way to preserve meat, sharing it across the whole camp was really just a form of storage, other people's stomachs. 2. You were never allowed to feel proud. This is why that old man mocked the kill. Anthropologists call it insulting the meat, a ritual where the camp downplays every kill and the hunter is expected to agree. One researcher who gifted a huge fat ox was told for days that he'd been cheated with a worthless animal, until it was butchered and turned out to be excellent. When asked why, the group explained plainly, a young man who thinks he's killed something great starts thinking he's better than everyone else, so they cool his heart before that idea can take root. In a world with no army, no walls, and no throne, mockery was the tool that kept anyone from rising above the group. And if jokes didn't work, isolation followed. 3. Your baby wasn't yours alone. Among the Efi of the Ituri forest, newborns were passed between many caregivers within hours of birth, sometimes nursed by women other than their mothers. This wasn't neglect. It was math. Human babies are extraordinarily costly to raise, and one mother alone couldn't manage children spaced just a few years apart, while also gathering food and walking miles daily. A whole network of aunts, grandmothers, and sisters carried the load, which is likely part of why humans could have children more frequently than other apes. The dark flip side. Since a group could only carry so many small children at once, some communities faced brutal decisions about a newborn's survival at birth itself, not out of cruelty, but the same harsh arithmetic that governed everything else. 4. You were never alone, ever. Shelters were thin and close together. Arguments, grief, and private moments were all essentially public. This absence of privacy is the answer to how these societies enforced rules without police. Gossip was the justice system. Reputations were updated constantly, and being mocked for a bad decision could follow you for life, with no way to escape it. There was no moving to a new town where nobody knew your story. 5. If you couldn't walk, the group decided your fate. We assume the injured were abandoned, but the archaeological record says otherwise. A Neanderthal skeleton found in an Iraqi cave, known as Shanidar I, shows a man who was blind in one eye, missing part of an arm, likely deaf, and limping. Yet all his injuries had healed years before death, meaning the group fed and protected him for a long time. Why? Because someone who couldn't hunt could still tend fire, watch children, or hold decades of irreplaceable knowledge. An old, unproductive person could be a living library. But the reverse was also true. If the group judged someone had nothing left to offer, there was no system to appeal to. 6. Someone else chose who you'd marry, often before you could talk. In many hunter-gatherer societies, marriages were arranged in childhood, sometimes before birth. But divorce was quick and common, and it carried little shame. Many people cycled through arranged marriages before landing on one that stuck, effectively choosing for themselves by adulthood. The real reason parents controlled this wasn't romance, it was survival. A marriage linked two families across distant territory, creating a place to go if your own camp's resources failed. 7. If someone asked for your things, you gave them up. Among the Juhonsi, a gift exchange network called Haro connected people across huge distances. You couldn't refuse a gift, but you also couldn't repay it immediately, or with something of exactly equal value, because settling the debt would end the relationship. Owing each other was the point. It kept the connection alive. A person with many Huxero partners had many places to turn to in hard times. Hoarding possessions, by contrast, made you the poorest person around. 8. You had to be able to walk away, and people did, constantly. Camps expanded and shrank throughout the year as families joined or left for other relatives' camps. When tensions rose, there was no judge to intervene. The group simply split apart. This built-in exit option is arguably why nobody could become a tyrant. You can't rule people who can vanish over the next hill with everything they own on their back. 9. The group could kill its own, as a collective decision. Repeat killers, or people who terrorized a camp, were first warned through gossip, then isolated, and if that failed, sometimes executed by group consensus, often carried out by the offender's own close relative, so no outside family would seek revenge and start a feud. It wasn't lawless chaos. It was an unwritten legal system built on reputation and last resorts. The dead didn't leave. In Gough's Cave in England, roughly 14,700-year-old human bones were found carefully shaped into skull cups. Not evidence of savagery, but likely of intimacy, similar to practices recorded among some Amazonian groups, who saw consuming or keeping the remains of loved ones as an act of devotion rather than abandonment to cold, distant ground. Death, in many of these cultures, wasn't an exit, it was a change of form, and the dead often stayed close to the living. Why did any of this work without enforcement? Every single rule points at the same target: stopping any one person from rising above what the group could tolerate. Meat was scrambled so no hunter gained power. Pride was mocked flat so no one gained status. Children were shared so no family gained advantage. Privacy was removed so nothing could be hidden. Possessions were pushed outward so no one accumulated wealth. Camps dissolved so no one could build a throne. And remarkably, traces of this instinct still live in us. In the classic ultimatum game experiment, people offered an unfair split of money, say $5 out of $100, will often refuse it entirely, even though pure logic says any money is better than none. That stubborn refusal to accept unfairness, even at a cost to yourself, is the same ancient instinct at work, the arrow rule, still quietly firing in your chest, tens of thousands of years after the last hunter was told his kill was skinny.